have to be within that total expenditure by the end of the year.
So it says, oh, I see remaining balance. Okay. Good.
I mean, this is, before we always thought that we could still spend the money in one item if it was over in the other, and the brakes were put on that.
Right.
And we'll get that later on in our discussion later on.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
question about the landmark, Royal Hondo Bridge landmark nomination, or
Yes.
that's going to be,
Yes. It's agenda item number 8.
I'll hold up.
Okay. And just a quick thing, I see Mr. Rasuros here today, and I want to thank him for coming. I've been back and forth with them. As you know, HLAC asked me to contact Planning Development to try to get more information on why, what were the costs in 2012, which, as we know, was the same amount as it is right now in our budget 2024, and the difference in costs charged to us by hourly rates by different levels, and versus then 2012 versus now. We never really got that answer, but we did get an answer about how we can get funds from the county. And I'm so glad Rosura is here today so that we can ask questions when we get to that agenda item. But that's why it's on the agenda item today, because there is that section, chapter 18. It's in our agenda item, and he brought that to our attention, and that's what we're discussing. So that's all I have on the budget. Any other questions on the budget? Okay, the budget's an informational item, so we do not. Okay, district reports. Individual commissioners may present brief reports that would be of interest to the public and/or commission as a whole. No official action will be taken in any district reports today.
Mr. Chair, I can report that the Mission Canyon Stone Bridge has been repaired one more time. They were working on it over the weekend. The stonemasons were out there. It's that same spot that keeps getting hit about twice a year. So it looks good now. Anything else?
No,
What's your neighborhood?
I get to hear it when it gets hit. It sounds up at my house, but maybe if they put a bollard in front of it, it would prevent that from happening over and over again, like they have at the corner of Foothill. It's been hit many. So that's what I was thinking, but
That's the city.
City.
yes,
City.
city, so that's.
Okay, doesn't look like we have any district reports. We're all in the holiday season here. Okay. Okay, well, let's move on then to our standard agenda. Okay, item number 8, designation of Arroyo Hondo Bridge 51-271 as a County of Santa Barbara Historic Landmark. The County Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission, HLAC, will consider adoption of a resolution designating the existing Arroyo Hondo Bridge as a County of Santa Barbara Historic Landmark. The bridge is located at County Route Post Mile SB 101, Post Mile 40.98, 2nd Supervisorial District. HLAC will also consider determining that the action is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to Section 15308 of the CEQA guidelines, because it is an action taken by a regulatory agency as authorized by state of local ordinance to assure the maintenance, restoration, enhancement, or protection of the environment when the regulatory process involves procedures for protection of the environment. So I thought today I would start out with just a quick background of how we got to where we are today. At our September 9th meeting, this is when we first discussed the Arroyo Hondo Bridge as a potential county landmark. At that time, we went through the whole history of the bridge, so I don't want to repeat everything we did September 9th. But the discussion was whether to initiate an application to investigate and potentially designate Arroyo Hondo Bridge as a county historic landmark. We voted to move forward on September 9th. We also voted to hire Amber Long for, do the work on the nomination for up to $1,000. October 7th, I received the draft nomination from Amber Long. October 14th, Krista Kia from Caltrans sent additional found documents, pictures about Arroyo Hondo Bridge, which is in your packet today. That was not in your packet back in September. It was a 1919 document, a 1920 biennial report, a 1950 freeways unit article, and there were some pictures, which unfortunately it was having some of those pictures I had a hard time getting to print out. I contacted Amber Long after I received that, and she made the changes to the original nomination as discussed in her budget. So she did some additional work to update the nomination she gave me on October 7th. On November 7th, I completed the peer review letter, which is in your packet. And let's see, mid-November. Yes, I had asked, draft, we don't always do this, but it's nice if we can have both the nomination and a resolution at the time of doing it. That helps us not having to come back for a second meeting. So I asked Commissioner Nye if he would like to work on a draft resolution, and he accepted, and I thank you very much, Commissioner Nye. And that was in mid-November after he came back from a long vacation. And so he worked on that, and then County Council got his draft resolution, and they worked on the revisions. So the one you see today has the revisions that they inputted. Let's see, back on November 14th, Caltrans has been amazing in this process. They actually prepared our legal description of the Arroyo Hondo Bridge for us, and that came from the state of California. So the legal description you see here was prepared by Caltrans. Unfortunately, by the time I got everything to Jonathan Martin to mail to them for the 20-day, there is a regulation that has to be sent to the person or the owner of the property 20 days before the meeting. And unfortunately, the letter did not get out in time. So Caltrans came through again because we had missed it. And on November 22nd, Caltrans drafted a letter to waive the notice for this meeting. And I believe that is also in your. So they kind of went above and beyond for us to have this meeting today. So I appreciate them again. So that's kind of where we are today. So today we have the nomination in front of us, and we also have the resolution. It looks like the changes I was going to mention has already been changed. There was some, again, there was a little difference. The original nomination had post mile 240.98 was a milepost, and that was an extra 2 in front of the 40. And of course, in the resolution that went to Commissioner Nye at the 240.98 in the resolution. So all that was corrected, and we contacted Caltrans again to make sure we got the right post mile. And they agreed to the 40.98, and they also agreed that post mile is 2 words, and it should be post mile and not 1 word. So that is where we are today. So I'm not doing a presentation of this proposed nomination because we went through that all on September 9th. So now we're at a, first we'll start with any ex parte from commissioners about this project. Do we have any to mention?
I was looking at it yesterday.
I'm sorry?
I looked by it yesterday.
Oh, drove by it.
This is a landmark we can't easily miss if we're driving the coast.
And the viewpoint is now open, correct? Yes, which is great. Yeah, when I went by to try to take pictures, it was still all under construction, so I couldn't really stop and take a look. Okay, so it looked okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
I've got 2 copies of Amber's nomination, they're both dated October 7th. I'm wondering if one of these is the revised.
The revised one will have new pictures on the back. They're kind of sepia colored.
Those weren't in there?
No, they were not in the original. So if you got the mail packet, that would be the revised one.
Okay, and what else was there text? How much text was revised?
Um, It was a little on the description on how long the bridge is and the width of the deck, things like that.
Technicals.
At the top of my head, I can't remember exactly. But that one report from 1919 really gave a lot more information on the actual construction of the bridge. We did have a discussion, Amber and I, concerning the wording. There was some wording in there, not sure about when the bridge was quit being used. And so we didn't really put that in the report, but it's pretty much, when you look at that 1950 freeway report, it pretty much says that is when they did the 2 lanes north and south that covered the culvert. And that's when they quit using the bridge, pretty much what we can see, but we did not put that in there because it wasn't quite, we don't know for sure. The whole idea is, another thing that's not in here is what has been changed to the bridge since construction. And that was a bit, we could not find any information that has been changed. And I'm just thinking that, just off the top of my head, that since it was 1950 that it was stopped being used, nothing's been done to it since 1950. And they might not have done anything between when it was built in 1918 and 1950. But again, we could not find any documentation. But it looks like the bridge is exactly as.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we do have Amber Long with her hand raised in the chat.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Amber Long.
Good morning, everyone. In addition to what Chairman is saying, there is another website floating around, like a county tourism website, that confuses Arroyo Hondo Bridge with the other bridge south of it that is a southbound only bridge now. And that was the cause of some of our revisions as well. Just trying to determine what was the accurate information. And thankfully, Chairman Kaufman Gray remembered what happened with those freeway lanes and those bridges. So we were able to remove some inaccurate information that was published on a visitor's website.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I can see now that under 9, it speaks to physical alterations. It says it was bypassed in 1980 and has no recognizable alterations.
Right, that's kind of what we decided.
If there's questions, if we're in questions now, Mr. Chair?
Let's see here. We have, yeah, we're in questions, so let's go to questions.
Okay, since this is going to be my last opportunity to give you any pearls of wisdom regarding our process, I'm going to go through this nomination and point out things that we might do differently. And you may or may not wish Ms. Long to do that now on this one. I mean, there's no question this is clearly a landmark. We've already decided it's worthy going forward. But in terms of providing all the information accurately, these are some thoughts I have. One thing, because of the fact this is a sort of anomalous, I thought it might be helpful here to have information under either 1 or perhaps 3, where it says name of property, to actually put Caltrans's bridge number, because that's the way they talk about it. And then if we actually look at the illegal description they've given us, it's the bridge and the bridge alone. There's no APN. So that may be something you can do that's informative there. And one thing I'm wondering about too is, although we say there's no alterations, something has changed, and that's the setting. And so I'm wondering if there needs to be any discussion here about integrity. I mean, in terms of physical integrity of the bridge itself, it's there, but it's no longer connected in the transportation link. And to me, that warrants some sort of discussion about, does it still have the ability to get across what it was supposed to do? these may be things that we should be making in comments, but I'm also putting them out there as questions because potentially Ms. Long might want to address them too. And then I'm really wondering about 10, description of current setting. One of the things that happens here is there appears to be some confusion about the points of the compass. We get caught up in the southbound and northbound. We, as residents, should know the transverse range creates the Gaviota Coast as an east-west situation. And so we should stick to points of the compass. If we want to refer to what's northbound or southbound or northbound lanes or something like that in the highway, we should actually use that language. So I actually attempted to rewrite number 10, and actually Jonathan has got up here on your screen what I attempted to do. What I was warned of when I became so disoriented was New Orleans. If you've ever been to New Orleans, the street grid is out of the world. It is so contorted. And because of that, there, people don't talk about north, south, east, west. They talk about lakeside or riverside. And so in this case, I tried to orient you according to the mountains or the ocean, because that's what's happening there. So what I've got here is the bypass, making that point right away, because that's one obvious things in terms of its setting. The bypass Arroyo Hondo Bridge is on the Gaviota Coast, which trends east-west. We should put a comma in there after east-west between the San Ynez Mountains and the Pacific Ocean, so that it's understood that it's the bridge that's between the mountains and the ocean. It spans Arroyo Hondo, and the east and west approaches only extend a few feet beyond the bridge and are close to traffic. So that's pointing out that you're not in the circulation system. It's changed. So that part of the setting has changed. The bridge, comma, and the railway trestle bridge that parallels it on the ocean side are highly visible for drivers on US 101. They're actually visible for drivers on both sides if you're looking, but you shouldn't be because it's a little dangerous to be doing so. The realigned modern day US 101 also parallels the bypass bridge, but it is set closer to the mountains. It relies upon a large engineered embankment to cross the arroyo, but a US 101 vista point accessible for southbound traffic, that's where we use the south and north orientation instead, allows visitors to stop and view the bridge close up. So that's what I would suggest as a more accurate setting description. Then
Just plug that in.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And see, I got to say, I'm a lot more verbose, so it may be a situation where you need a continuation sheet there. Well, Ms. Long managed to fit hers in the other. And the same thing is sort of happening when we get to photographs. If you look at section 16 photographs, view of Arroyo Hondo Bridge from the south facing north. The historic photos are from the 1919 report. In fact, this is the view of the Arroyo Hondo Bridge. And what it is the view of the Arroyo Hondo Bridge, and it's a view of the east end of the south side facing west. Right? Right? Yeah. So I think if we could be accurate there as to the point of the compass. Read carefully, I would say. Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll leave it at that for now. I know. So my questions are, might be better and more accurate?
Sorry, Keith. Just want to make sure your microphone's on.
If we want to insert what he just mentioned, we can do that during comments and make an amendment to the nomination. Like we're in questions, so if you have any more questions on the nomination, that would be the time now. And I know there was a lot of material. And I want to thank you, Jonathan, for giving us a revised resolution today. That's really nice. Yes. Yes, go ahead. ask that.
Yeah. It seemed to me that when we did, the Cold Spring Canyon Bridge, we had to change some of the language that was in our typical resolution because it was owned by the state of California. And basically we had to say, well, they'll come to us and we'll tell them what we think if they want to change something. But it didn't say that they couldn't do anything without getting our approval. We revised that. And so I'm wondering if, once again, that's going to be
I think
necessary.
we kept that in.
Yeah.
Look, let me see where we have it. I think 2C. That is, I think it's the same wording that we had in the Cold Springs Bridge resolution.
So it's first been reviewed by the commission for comments and the application has considered the comments. So it's not like a straight up or down approval situation. Okay,
I mean, the
we've
Cold-
got it.
the Cold Springs, we had added also the railing or whatever that they could take down. Or,
Yeah.
That was in that same wording.
If I may, Chair, I wanted to mention too that Caltrans said post mile would be lowercase and 2 words. So we should change that in the first whereas clause. And then in the title, we could keep it all caps, but have it be 2 words.
Oh, it didn't get changed. Okay, yeah. And like I said earlier, it should be 2 words, all lowercase.
And then they took the word approximately out of the legal description. I think it's up to you if you want to take it out of the title and the first whereas clause.
I think. Is it supposed to be, I thought it was supposed to be 40.9 that they agreed to, not the 41.
I actually have it updated on the screen right now, so we have a,
Right.
I must have just grabbed the wrong one.
It's 40.98 is what they said.
Since that is a specific number, it shouldn't be approximately, it should be just, I mean, I would think just post mile 40. Disagree.
So the 240 is wrong.
The 240 was way wrong. It was, I think that was just an extra 2 that got stuck in front of the 40. So the correct number that has been agreed upon by Caltrans and everybody is the 40. As it was also, it had to be changed in legal description. Yeah, the legal description originally was 41.05, and they agreed to change it to 40. There was 2 versions. I don't think anyone saw the first version of the legal description because we changed it before. So, but make sure there's the Y after the number. That was, Caltrans forgot the Y on the bridge number, and they sent us a brand new legal, all new signatures. That one.
Does that come under name of property or what?
It's a separate page. It's attached to the resolution. If you see on the resolution, it says Exhibit A. It's under Exhibit A. Anyway, we just want to make sure all the documents have the same number, 40.9.
not capital.
Are we still on questions? I want to make sure I'm good straight here. Oh, maybe we should move to public comments, and then we can go into commissioner comments. Jonathan, do we have any public comments on the nomination of Arroyo Hondo Bridge as a County of Santa Barbara Historic Landmark?
If anybody would like to make a public comment on this item, please raise your hand in the chat. Over. Seeing none. Well, Amber's part of the applicant team. Would you like me to give her a minute to talk?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, let's go ahead and have her. She has something to say. Go ahead. This would be a good.
Thank you. I do appreciate the commissioner's comments on the application and the description. Sometimes they're very challenging, so I appreciate that feedback. Otherwise, my only comments on this process would be that given the constraints of, time and budget, perhaps there's a better middle ground we could come to in terms of how much time I may spend on it against your budget and the time you spend reviewing it. This particular nomination, this one separately on its own, was challenging because it was really hard to find information until at the end when Caltrans sent us that information. So some budget was spent on trying to find information that we couldn't find. So that's my only comment, just to provide some more background on this particular one. And I am always open to the comments and suggestions. I take notes when they're given to me. So those are my only comments, not specifically on this landmark, but just on this process.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, let's move to commissioner comments. Commissioner Nye?
Well, I appreciate Amber Long's comments, and we are along those lines. We have chosen the particular historical structures that we have because they already had, to some extent, a history and an evaluation done on them. So we thought we could have Amber basically pull together information already generated, as opposed to going out into the field and doing a lot of digging on her own. Her budget is based on essentially having that part of the work already done. So there on that, the Caltrans report that she was able to use, it was very helpful and got us all this distance as far as having the facts. So anyway, just the context.
Final commissioner comment? Commissioner Whittock.
First of all, I want to say that I really appreciate the document with all its photographic illustrations, and especially the engineering drawings. Those are music to my ears. But I do want to mention that I think in the continuation sheets, there was an opportunity under item number 11. Where are we here? Item number 11 was about provide a brief history of the nominated property. And I do appreciate that the history that is mentioned in the continuation sheets is about nuts and bolts and concrete and reinforcing bar and where it came from and all that. But I do think there is if there had been time, opportunity to talk about the history of the highway development along the Pacific coast. And I believe it was not called the Coast Highway, it was the Pacific Coast Highway. And that was actually created in 1905. And a lot of improvements along the West Coast, particularly in Santa Barbara, the bridge across the I can't think of it right now, the East Beach. What was that? What's the body of water there? Bird Refuge, the crossing. That was developed in the early teens and along with the development of the highway and the increase in automobile traffic, which greatly shaped the West Coast and California. So I would be nice to see a paragraph in item 11, which addressed the transformation of the West Coast because of the highway system. And this bridge is one of those elements. It's just a
Mr. Chair. Yes, once again, I'm just thrilled that the commission has before it such an obvious step in terms of designating this bridge as a historical landmark. And I really do appreciate the additional information that we're shown regarding the construction of the bridge. If I can point out to commissioners some of the incredible scaffolding and formwork that was done in order to create this. It is described in some of these articles about how that was very difficult to do at the time of the First World War because labor was short and you had to pay somebody a certain amount to get up this high in the air and work this remotely and in a dangerous position too. But you needed somebody who knew what they were doing, obviously. But what I'd point out is if we compare this to the Cold Spring Canyon Bridge, this is why the Cold Spring Canyon Bridge is welded steel. And to compare these two bridges shows you, how far things had come in terms of the engineering, but this was clearly cutting edge at the time. At the same time, it's incredibly stylish. The architectural classical revival elements, mimicking an aqueduct are amazing. Later on, they drop those Doric capitals. You just don't need those. But if you take the Doric capitals out, you've got real 1940s architecture here that's actually being built considerably sooner in Santa Barbara County. So it really is amazing. I want to thank Caltrans and Ms. Long for incorporating that additional information into our designation, the nomination, and the designation. And what I do hope is that now that we recognize this, is that Caltrans puts in some sort of effort into maintaining this bridge. Because we're in an amazing situation in terms of integrity in that this hasn't been changed. Think of what other structure we have that's more than 100 years old that hasn't been changed. I think that you'd be really hard pressed to figure out another landmark that hasn't had a single change in 100 years. But this was really good construction work with design and money. If you look at the process as it's described, the county itself had to commit to this. And this is why we had a state agency overlooking it to make sure that the designs were good that the counties were going to build. Otherwise, you're going to have to tear it down tomorrow because it's already been outdated or it's no longer adequate. So it's a great example of what society can do. It may sit there by itself now and people may say it's not functional, but it is in terms of a monument to the development of our community. And so please, Caltrans, continue to maintain this to remind us what we can do. Thank you.
Just to put a final lid on this discussion regarding Mr. Witosh's comments, which I agree with. On page 2 of the nomination under letter H, there's a criteria for reflecting the geographic patterns, including of different eras, settlement and growth, particularly transportation. And it's concluded that the bridge was a very important factor in the commerce, transportation, and development of our region. So it raises that important significance, even though it lacked any additional historical information that we would enjoy seeing sometime. Anyway, thanks.
Okay, I just want to say, first of all, thank all the commissioners for your input on this. I think it's a wonderful nomination. Would like to hope that we can insert Commissioner Duncan's number 10, what he brought today that he showed on the screen. I'd like, when we do a motion to approve this county historic landmark, to add that as an amendment, put it in place. And then I also liked his idea for just changing that one by the picture here. From the east and south side, changed facing north to facing west. My concern is doing too much changes. It's just going to cost us more because Amber Long is the one in charge of changes to this. I don't think we can do it. It's her nomination. So, I think if we keep the changes simple, we can afford those changes. And as far as Howard, Commissioner Wittosh has a great point about the history. But I think, like Commissioner Nye said, it is in resolution, a smaller amount. One of our problems have been in the past is we'll come with nominations that are like a book, and we sometimes have to kind of narrow them down. We could add everything. I mean, there'd be so much we could add to this nomination. But I think it's very concise, and it is what we need to have put it on our website if we do approve it, in addition to the resolution. So I approve this nomination. Of course, I'm not even going into why it should be a historic landmark. I think it's so obvious. It's a wonderful bridge. And I think we're so fortunate that the land around it is preserved, and there's now a turnout there. So the whole area is like a little historic mini district. It's not a district. I mean, the land is being preserved around it, and there's access to this bridge for the public on the southbound side. It's just a win-win for everybody. And at the very end, I just want to thank Caltrans for working with us. They have bent over backwards. Every time I've asked for something, within a day, 2 days, get the answer for it. And we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't Caltrans approving this. We always try to make sure that we have the land. So I guess we're at the time to move for a motion to go ahead and nominate Arroyo Hondo Bridge as the County of Santa Barbara.
Mr. Chair, I'd be very glad to do that. Okay. So I would move that the County Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission designate the Arroyo Hondo Bridge, number 51-2711, as a County of Santa Barbara historic landmark, and adopt the resolution that makes that designation, noting that the resolution needs to refer to Post Mile 40.98, and the documents in the nomination should also refer to 40.98, and ask that the nomination be revised so that the description number 10 speaks to the compass points as described, and similarly the title for the photograph of the bridge, the modern day one, refer to the east end of the south side facing west, and determine that the process is exempt from SECA. I think I've got it all.
Second.
Yeah. CEQA, that's what I said.
I think you got it all, except you said 2711, I think. So it's number 51-27L.
I'll second.
Yes.
Okay, we have, a
And-
motion, we have a second, so we're for further discussion on the motion on the.
And we add something to the effect that we will retain Amber Long to make these minor corrections in the application form. I mean, I assume we're talking about an hour's work here.
Mr. Chair, if I could just, that is a separate motion.
I thought you mentioned the,
Yep. Yep.
the application.
And I'll leave it to the commission whether you want her to do it or we can do it in-house, whichever works.
Okay, but do we need to add it to yours, I guess?
It wouldn't actually have to be,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Sure, I have a question about the nomination. So this is a county historic landmark, but the bridge is owned by the state of California. So in our county, we have a provision that says if you are the owner of a historic landmark, you have to take care of it, maintain it. Does that requirement in the county ordinance apply to the state?
That is something county council looked into, and that's why we put the maintenance in this resolution. Because there is some new state laws that about what county can or cannot do to help the state. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. And so, we have worked with Caltrans. We've gotten their, approval.
The only reason that it's of concern to me is that if this were an actively used bridge, there would be no question that they would maintain it. But this is a inactive bridge, and it's just sitting there, and I don't even know whether pedestrians can cross the bridge. So there is a reason to maintain it for safety. Just, is it to look at or to actually walk across? And then there's a question of equestrians and a question of bicycles and small vehicles and so forth.
I mean, that's a very good question. I would think that since they own this bridge, if they didn't want it to be preserved, they would have let us know. So I would think that they're liable for that bridge. So I'm sure they're going to want to maintain it to make it feel safe, and they would probably let us know down the road if they decide it's not safe anymore, that we need to do something.
It's not going to change my second to the motion, but I'm concerned that where the state agencies and governmental agencies have responsibility, rather than take the risk, they just say, sorry, you can't go on to into this place. Bar access. And that would be unfortunate.
So we have a motion. Any more discussion? But thank you. That is it. I guess we could just go to a vote for the nomination as amended. And let's just do a vote from my left to right.
Aye.
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 And chair says aye. So it's unanimous. Just to let you know, we have been asked by planning development to always work in advance when we're working on a nomination to let them know. So they're already in the process of trying to get this scheduled to the Board of Supervisors within the 90 days. And they're looking at the month of February. This is something it's taking more than 90 days to get something on the Board of Supervisors. So in the future, if we ever have a nomination, before we approve it, we need to start Otherwise, we have to, which costs more time. Okay, let's move on.
Mr. Chair, I believe Commissioner Nye has something.
Commissioner Knight.
We still need to ask if we want, or discuss and decide if we want Amber Long to make these revisions in her application.
Just to let people know, as I said during the budget, today's, if it's only an hour, we'll be charged $125, which makes our current amount, if we add that, $875. So that gives us another $125 to do this work, to be under the $1,000 form. So I guess Amber's here. Amber, are you going to need more than an hour to do these changes to the nomination?
No, I will not. I'll likely only need half an hour because I've been changing them as you've been mentioning them.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So I guess we don't need to because it will be within the original $1,000 that we approved.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on. Okay, agenda item number 9. On consideration of listing the 6 Front Country Santa Barbara County Trails landmarked by Board of Supervisors Resolution number 77-526 on the HLAC website. County Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission will consider listing the 6 Front Country Santa Barbara County Trails on the HLAC website. This will be a discussion and vote on the following trails: the Royal Burro Trail, the Rattlesnake Trail, the Hot Spring Trail, the Romero Canyon Trail, the Rincon Trail, and the Fremont Trail. They were declared to be Santa Barbara County landmarks on November 7th, 1977 by Board of Supervisors Resolution number 77-526. The discussion would be to list each trail separately without landmark numbers to the HLAC landmark page with a link to the resolution. These trails were originally assigned landmarks number 14 to 19. Those numbers are now assigned to other landmarks. There could be an explanation for why they are listed without. So I want to give you a little background about this. It's been a very confusing item, and I just want to give you a little background of why we are here today. At an August 12th hearing of HLAC, we had a discussion of the 6 landmark trails. But back on July 2nd, HLAC received email from Dave Everett about 6 front county trails landmarked by the Board of Supervisors on November 7th, 1977. So we received the email July 2nd. We agendized the item on August 12th and had a discussion about these landmarks because no one knew that these landmarks existed. Not at the end of October, I've been trying to get after that, I tried to get a follow-up, and the points of August 12th, I want to go over some of the points that were discussed at their meeting on August 12th. Is resolution number 77-526 was approved by the Board of Supervisors on November 7th, 1977, designating 6 trails as historic landmarks, numbered 14 through 19. There is no corresponding historic reports that support the designation with that. It was confirmed that resolution number 77-526 was recorded after being passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors on November 7th, 1970. Our Historic Landmarks website does not list these landmarks. The clerk of the board staff could not find any documentation that the 6 designations were rescinded. Current historic landmark number 14 on the HLAC website is the Sexton House. This landmark was adopted on January 3rd, 1978. It is less than 2 months after the resolution was passed. The 6 trails are not listed as California State Historic. So that was pretty much kind of what was discussed at the meeting. We saw the minutes from Historic Landmarks before the resolution was passed by the Board of Supervisors, showing that they wanted it to be landmarks So I've been kind of working with Veronica King was involved with this because there's a project on one of the trails that she's a planner to. And I've been kind of working with her to find out if there was any more information. And basically, it's been no new information since our meeting or not. So I brought it to attention that, we need to decide to do something. People are wondering what's going on. We have a resolution that says we have landmarks. I talked to county council, and county council suggested listing trails as landmarks on HLAC website and include a link to the existing landmark resolution. There does not have to be landmark numbers included on the list. So that's something county council has mentioned, that we don't have to have numbers. Something. And then the linked resolution could include a cover note explaining the situation of overlapping. So this is from county council on, the easiest thing would be just go ahead. They haven't been rescinded. Let's put them on our website so people know that we have these landmarks. There's other questions. I had asked questions about, could we send a letter to the Board of Supervisors asking for new landmark numbers? County council said, well, first of all, it costs money to do things before the Board of Supervisors. So where would the money come from to deal with that question? And if it does go to the Board of Supervisors, they have the choice to not add numbers, add the numbers, or they could rescind all the landmarks altogether. I mean, that's the prerogative of the Board of Supervisors. They could decide, well, let's just not have them be landmarks. So that would be some of the pitfalls of trying to go to the Board of Supervisors. So I decided to bring this up today as an agenda item for discussion. And I think the easiest way is what County Council said, is just put them on our website, their landmarks, and leave it as that. And so that is my background. Before I get to questions, we'll get into questions, but let's do any ex parte first before we get going forward. Anybody, conversations about the trails with anybody? Okay. So let's go to questions. So we'll go now to Commissioner Malcolm.
Okay, I understand we assign numbers as according to when the Board of Supervisors adopts them as landmarks. However, is it a Board of Supervisors thing that they assign a number, or is it just as a matter of chronologically, this is when it happens? Like we assign the number, or the number is just assigned because it's next? I'm asking, does the Board of Supervisors have to approve the assigning of a number?
That's a county council question.
In this case, I think they would, because they specifically assigned the numbers in the resolution that they adopted. And I also wanted to clarify one thing. I did talk to the planner who was working on this, on the statement that the document was recorded. I asked if she means it was recorded at the county recorder's office, and she said, no, but there's a stamp on the resolution that says it was filed with the clerk recorder. So there's a distinction there.
I'm sorry.
I
Miss-
doubt it was actually recorded in the county recorder's records
It was just, the document was stamped.
as filed. I think that at the time, that may have been the process, but I'm just doubting that it's actually in the county recorder's grantor grantee index.
So officially, we have two landmarks assigned 14 through 19.
Correct.
Okay, so that's how it is, right?
Well, that was the idea, that we could just put them on the website without a number
Well, why would we want to do that then?
to confuse people. I mean, it would,
I know there will be confusion with,
well, if we have two number 14s, two number 15s, two
Mhm.
number 16s.
or maybe, just a matter of non-confusion, put like an A or a 0.1 next to it or something. It's not in the official record as such, but I think just to keep it, because they are already designated 14 through 19, and then the Board of Supervisors redesignated 14 through 19 as well for other landmarks. maybe we don't need to reassign or not have a number for them, just, excuse me. We don't need to go by the official Board of Supervisors record per se for our website, just to, because it's nice to know how many landmarks we have and have them all numbered, but if we have a little bit of overlap, then we can distinguish and maybe make an addendum to why the number, maybe do a 14A, 15A, or 14.1, 15 point, whatever, addendum to explain that, like you mentioned to explain, but yeah, okay, so the Board of Supervisors has to officially assign a number, then they already did that. I would not like these landmarks unnumbered. Maybe just keep them as they are with an explanation.
Well, we could do, it's up to the, county council mentioned that we'd list them without numbers with an explanation why the resolution says they have numbers. But we could list them with numbers with an explanation why there's 2 number 19s or 2 14s.
Yeah, because I think it's,
Either way probably could be done. A county council, what is your input on that?
I suppose you could do it either way, but I was envisioning on your website, you'd have the name of the bridge, or you could have all of them named, and then a link to the resolution. So you could see the number if you look at the resolution, but I don't think you necessarily have to have a number next to the listing. It might help, Jonathan, if you're able to pull up the website so they could envision what it looks like already.
The website? Thank you.
Could we reassign them new numbers, each one, all 5 of them, like subsequent, and you could put in that they were previously designated, but because of, an error that was not timely.
It would have to go to the Board of Supervisors.
So it still would, to give them a number. And stuff.
That's their,
5 different.
they would have to rescind the old numbers.
So then maybe it'd be.
That would be a board. And like I said, it's, okay, we have in front of our screen here how it's linked, how they're listed. As you can see, it has the number and it's a link. So you link on any one of those landmarks, it will go with the information about the landmark. So the idea, Jonathan, you want to scroll down to the bottom? See how up to date we are? Okay, yeah, so we have so after the idea was after you just list them without a number.
What's wrong?
Well, it has to go to the Board of Supervisors.
You want to avoid that?
Making new numbers, yeah, unless you want to have a new number 14. If you want to have 2 number 14s, 2 number 15s, yeah.
I think it would be very confusing. I do think to have no listing is also misinformation. I think they should have unique numbers. I don't know why we cannot start the numbering like 55, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. Ask the Board of Supervisors to make the administrative change. This is not about history. This is just about bookkeeping. Housekeeping. This numbering.
County Council, you want to explain to me how you explained in the email about what it can open up by doing that? And first of all, just the cost of doing this. We're so involved in an hourly planning and development staff time. We're looking at like a $5,000 cost, what it
Is that
costs.
what it would be?
To anything we do to the Board of Supervisors is averaging about $5,000 in cost. Yes. But without the cost, so just
That
the,
is in- that
what,
is inhibiting
yeah,
information.
what can happen? What are the, if we brought something to Board of Supervisors, what would there's different things they could do besides what we think they would.
I thought the easiest was just to put it up on the website, but if you wanted to go to the board, you could. I don't know if planning would be willing to take the item to the board. They haven't committed to do that. And then the the board could decide not to renumber, or they could decide they don't want these trails to be landmarks. So there's some downsides, I think.
Do they charge by the number of resolutions or the?
It's hourly, staff time, all of that gets rolled up into costs. And we'll get to that later when we do budget discussion.
And then we also have the issue that most of these have, a historical report on them. And it would be helpful for each of these trails to have, more detail. Because if they are a historic landmark, it's anything that happens to them and any change of any segment of them that should be able to be determined what was the original standing. And that's why I'm saying I don't know whether they should have individual numbers and something about each one and where the entrance is, just somewhat about the history, because some of these have, they don't have, but some of these are very old, like Arroyo Burro was originally an Indian trail. I mean, there's stuff that should be in there because people have to maintain the, who's going to maintain, who's going to.
happened is back in
oversee.
1977, there was really no requirement, there still is no requirement for historic for a county landmark or place of merit. It's kind of what we have over the years have decided that we needed. And so when this was done in 1977, they just had Forest Service approval, they had public approval, and they got the Board of Supervisors approval. There was no record exactly where these trails are, or mile, or GPS location. So to me, if that's another thing, we could be opening up a can of worms down the road. If you look at the early landmarks, like one we just did, number 1, it's just a brief little description about it. There was really no historic report for that, like landmark number 1 or 2 early, and this was number 14. So back then there wasn't that.
Well, and something on the last landmark on the bridge, it was one of the questions I do believe Mr. Wittosh made. It was about that the owner of, I would say, segments of the trail, whether county, city, Forest Service, you're dealing with 3 public agencies, but you also have easements across people, properties, and most of them have become recorded when it's on but you had said that it behooves the owners to maintain these. So that, I mean, I'm just trying to get this defined so these landmarks can be protected, and it behooves us to give something about it,
This is a good point.
clarify.
This is a good point.
I think it's a very good point. I think today we were just trying to let people be aware that we have these landmarks. And right now, no one knows that these are landmarks. And just getting them up on our website lets people be aware. We could always down the road revisit it, but I'm always afraid with what county council mentions is Board of Supervisors could decide we don't need those anymore. Let's just don't number them and we can rescind. Commissioner Steinway, you bring questions now because we have to go to public comment too.
Well, my question is 014 the same as 14?
Sorry,
Is 014 the same as 14? So if you just put a 0 in front of 14, 15, 16, there you go.
but again, is that something the Board of Supervisors has to approve? Or is this something we can?
I'm just wondering if the Board of Supervisors might want to get it right.
Yeah, finally.
I mean, it's kind of an embarrassment, right, that we're in this pickle. I don't know. It's a
Chair.
question I have.
The other approach, I mean, I like the 014 approach, would be to go to landmark number 55 dash 1, 2, 3, 4, or 55 dash A, B, C, D, E, F, something like that, so that.
Well, that
so
would
that the-
imply that they're all under one landmark and they're all separate landmarks.
Yeah.
So they would have to be numbered separately because they were, that's how they were nominated.
Because of the ownership, also that would be another.
Would you have to notice, fire, I mean, you'd have to start all over again, or would we just, this is we really want to get this right.
Well, that's, I think that we're opening up a lot of, yes, go ahead.
If the public is there,
Comment. We need to work. Right.
threshold things we can agree on. Leave other things to a subcommittee to develop and come back with recommendations.
Okay.
I do have,
Stop questions from commissioners now, and let's move on to public comment.
I do have one speaker slip. Mr. Chair, Otis Gleff. I didn't say that last name wrong.
Please state your name.
Good morning. My name is Otis Califf. I'm president of the Santa Barbara County Trails Council. I'm also really active with CRATAC, the County Riding and Hiking Trails Advisory Committee. And I've spoken with you recently, a few months ago, and about how thrilled we are to discover this, because trails are always just taken for granted. Oh, nobody even knows who they are, who they belong to, and who takes care of them. And and they've been a really integral part of the development of Santa Barbara, especially the recreational part. I remember reading once Thompson talking about the Potter Hotel, and they were back around 1900, they were promoting the number of miles of horse trails they had. So we're really excited about this, but we also feel that this is very, very important, and we don't want to get it dropped. The issue dropped again. Say if it costs $5,000, it's almost that I would personally pay to get numbers for these. And except because somebody goofed up 50 years ago, county council, P&D or somebody, why should I have to pay $5,000? So Trails Council sent you a letter, it's in your packet, and the last paragraph suggests some possibility for numeration, and I don't understand it, and that it would have to go before the board. But I hope you would look at it. It's clear that they are landmarks. That's established. There's no question about that. Am I right? I think I understood that. As part of a discussion about this, you should make clear that any projects that alter the character of a segment of one of these trails should be subject to a cultural resource report prepared by a qualified expert to assess whether such development would cause significant impacts to cultural resources by altering key character defining features of the affected trail segment. Impacts to these designated historic landmarks should receive the same level of review and protection that would be provided for an historic building. And I hope you just stand really firm on this, because I think there's going to be pushback from P&D and from developers. And they have been declared historic landmarks. They're really important to the community, and let's start taking them seriously. Thank you very much.
That's the last one. Okay, well, we can just move on to commissioner comments, unless you have questions. Comments, yeah, let's move on to comments. And there's a lot of things we could do here. So I'd like to hear. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Okay, I think this is kind of funny. We're just really overthinking this. It is quite simple, actually, to me. Now that I think about it more, it's just, it was just a oversight overlooked years ago about this. And so we have double landmark numbers. So what? I think the easy solution is just put it on our list of landmarks. Maybe you can put like a dotted box around the original 14 through 19, which are these trails, with maybe like a 2-sentence explanation. Hey, there was oversight in 1977. We found these in 2024. And these are the originally numbered 14 through 19 landmarks. And the next 14 through 19 landmarks were 1978 and after. And it's just so simple. I think we should embrace this mistake of history as part of Santa Barbara County's history. And it's just a simple fix. We don't need to really fix it, air quotes, fix it. You know, we just embrace it as it is. It's 214 through 19s with just a simple explanation on our website.
I have a follow-up comment to that. I'm impressed by the uniqueness of each of these trails, not just the path of the trail, but the fact that these are literally historic easements that cross property lines. They may not be recorded. They are there. They're like the sales of the city. And because of their uniqueness, I don't think you can have a blanket double listing and double digits. I think they need to have a name, a number. It is there that is assigned to this trail because this trail goes through the Los Padres National Forest. This trail goes across 3 private properties. This trail goes across the county. This trail goes across the city. I don't know what it is, but each one has a unique set of circumstances and conditions that apply to the maintenance of the trail, the responsibility for the trail, and preservation. So I tend to fall to the side of this is an important thing to get right at some point. You know, the naming, we can argue about the naming, but the concept, the principle of getting this little bureaucratic snafu corrected is very important for this committee. If we were not a historical landmarks commission, okay, but I think that's what we do. We try to get it fixed. I like the idea of throwing this back to the powers that be and say, you guys messed up back in 1977. What are you going to do about it?
May I? Here? Or no, ma'am?
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Stone.
At the August meeting, I brought up some points, and it was like regarding when the environmental laws came into NEPA, you know, at the governmental level, CEQA in California, and they were all a product of the 70s. And at that time, there weren't computers, so a lot of this didn't have a public site like we have now. And also, if you think about it, the resolution was prior to the new year, and there could have been new supervisors. I don't know the history of all this, that they may not have had the board memory of that they had just designated. This was all brand new. And so, I do agree with Mr. Witosh that we do need to get it correct. And I just worry about the supervisors being embarrassed by it, but I don't think so. It was just, it was a product of the times and it needs, a historic correction. And it's our job as landmarks to correct this. But I think it is important to do it correctly and to really to address this in a way that, because these trails are important. I mean, just thinking about, look at the Romero Canyon Trail, that has very big history about Native Americans going over to the valley. Then you have Rattlesnake Trail. That was, the ox cart for Schofield, Mr. Schofield. And there's the old well up there. I mean, there are resources on these trails. Hot Springs had the old Hot Springs, the foundations are up there. It's important for us to kind of give a little history to each one of Fremont. It may not have been Fremont on it, but I do think it was. But he did. He came over the mountains there and he lost all the horses. Each one of these should be, really thought out and taken care of, and everything should be done correctly. And I don't know how to do it. Get the narrative right. And I also don't know, there are a lot of trails groups besides Trails Council. There's Montecito Trails Foundation, which I have to say I'm a board member for 35, 38 years. And they have good funding. I mean, you could actually, but I don't know how that would need to pay for some of these things. There are resources in this community that I don't know how you can donate for something like that. That's going to be a question for county council too. But it's going to be a cause célèbre if this, when the public realizes this. There are hundreds of people every day in all these trails and on the weekends. You can't believe it. I was there once with the Forest Service and for like 2 hours, and there were 200 people going up Cold Springs Trail. So these are very beloved assets to our community. So this is kind of a big deal.
Let's do Commissioner Steinwalk and then we'll do.
We're here in the Peanut Gallery. First of all, I think it's really important that we consider natural resources as important as bridges and buildings. I agree. And I think, especially given a lot of the controversy with the Hot Springs Trail going forward, and this is a really good thing for this to be brought to the forefront right now. Right, why don't we, here's a suggestion, I'm not sure if that goes into comments or whatever, but why don't we just put it on the website right now and then figure out how to number it? At least it's on the public purview as being a landmarked trail.
Commissioner Malcolm.
Okay, I'm sorry, I need to clarify something for myself. These landmarks are not in danger of being delisted, are they? We just found them, they are landmarks. So I don't understand why we're talking about to set the record straight. They are what they are. There's no danger of them being delisted. The only thing is numbering the way we cut. And I don't think, like I said, my suggestion, I don't think is wrong. It's not going to negate nor diminish the importance of these landmarks. They just may call to attention. So if somebody's looking over a list, say, hey, what's this going on? 14 through 19 is listed twice. Let's look into it. It may call to attention and give it a higher standing if somebody's looking at it. I don't know. It just, we're overthinking this too much. They're just the numbering system. The history is that they were forgotten. Now we've remembered them. And there's 2 14 through 19s. Let's just embrace it and move on with an explanation. I don't see it, the big problem. There's nothing to diminish these landmarks by keeping them in the order that then the historic integrity of it is, hey, these were done first, then there is another 14 through 19. Just keep it as it is with an explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since I really like to hike, and once upon a time I used to ride, I really do appreciate trails. And I want to say one thing about living in Britain when I was a small boy, was there were National Trust trails everywhere. You could go everywhere because the assumption was that everybody was first a pedestrian, not that everybody was first a driver of a car. The basic assumption is you first were a pedestrian. And that often meant you were going to walk alongside hedgerows on the edge of a field and cross a stile in order to keep the livestock in. But you could get from A to B without going a long circuitous way around. Often it was the most direct way because people had been doing it for so many years. It was a prescriptive easement, essentially, before the National Trust ever officially, legally described it as one. So I do feel we do need to protect these trails, and I just think we ought to do the bottom line. You know, we can come to it later in terms of what other things we do. But to begin with, I would simply take the section from our agenda here, and it says the Arroyo Burro Trail, the Rattlesnake Trail, the Hot Spring Trail, the Romero Canyon Trail, the Rincon Trail, and the Fremont Trail were declared to be Santa Barbara County landmarks on November 7th, 1977 by the Board of Supervisors Resolution number 77-526. I think we simply should list these 6 trails. They're going to, if we want to put them at the top instead of our, at the bottom of this list of, now we have a whole lot, having added another one to it. I wouldn't worry about numbers for now. That just is a whole nother discussion. The fact that they had numbers originally obviously thought that they were important. The Board of Supervisors thought they were, but now we shouldn't subtract or complicate their status by attempting to give them some number that wasn't what was given them originally. We can't give them the numbers 14 through 19. Those are out there. They're on the plaques that are out there. We can't take that back. So I would just put up them on our website and this statement here and a link to the resolution. And then when people link to the resolution, they can see, oh, that once upon a time, these did have numbers. And the reason why I lay it out there is this is the most basic thing we can do. This is the simplest thing to do. We can all agree on that, and that's fact. We're not going beyond a statement of fact. And because it's not going to be up to us who actually enforces this, as Commissioner Saloga points out, kick it upstairs to those who are going to have to decide on it. Yeah, well, why don't we just stick to the statement of fact, and then the Board of Supervisors and Planning and Development is going to see how they deal with it, because it is going to be complex. There's no doubt about
that. This is something that happens here in the commission periodically, where we're trying to find solutions, and there's there are obvious ideal solutions or proper that would follow and how we normally do things, which is to have numbers on everything, to have historic assessment report on each item that we bring forward, site plans, documentation of the property, and so on and so forth. But we have a real issue with doing all that in this situation. I agree with those who have said that we need to be practical and still protect historic resources as best we can. And so I would be in favor of the practical solution, which is to go ahead and put these trails on our list without numbers at this point. My fear is that we don't know how the Board of Supervisors, if they even agree to put this on the agenda, which is a very good question, on their agenda, we don't know how they will respond, and they may not like sort of this being preached at, saying you messed up, now fix it. Yeah, I don't know. I get, maybe I should have more respect for our supervisors, which, anyway, that's not here nor there, but, and then we have the sheer cost of getting it on the agenda, and then all of that entails, if it's 5,000 per trail, pushback isn't a strong enough word for what may happen. So long story short, I would suggest, let's do what's practical, what we can do. And it's, as I've said before, this was actually a gift to us, and we should grab it and run with it and go as far as we can. And along the line, we'll have to find ways to make it a more ideal solution, having the sites numbered and documented and so on and so forth. I can tell you that what I said before is that I have done a historical assessment on a trail in Montecito, and it's really hard because there's no building permits and all the usual stuff that you historian finds. There are aerial photographs, but a lot of the history of these trails requires a lot of work and a lot of digging, a lot of literary sources. So that in itself will be a challenge. So those are my comments. Thanks.
So,
Commissioner Stowe.
so if we do it simply as suggested, I would recommend that we do each trail, not just say, oh, like it's listed here, just, because you don't know which one was which. They don't say Arroyo Burro was 14, 15.
Well,
But
the
I
rel-
would think to just say each one and refer to the resolution, so you make them distinct. So in the eventuality that we get more elaborate, then they would each have their own historical record. Because there are real, potential landmark things. There is also a Mission Dam on Rattlesnake Creek. And it's, with the rains, it's gotten pulled apart wider, but there are real historic resources on these, and it would be good to reference them somehow. But just do this simply now, and maybe as, Commissioner Lansing said, to have a subcommittee that can elaborate a little bit, because we like the information. If somebody hits on this and they go, Rocky Neck Park, and we did, we have things in there, you have photographs, you have your, yeah, that might be, do the simple thing first, but to see what we can do, absent having to take each trail separately to the board.
Just a clarification question. So you're, oh, I'm sorry. Am I correct that there's no urgency in resolving this, first of all? Is that right?
Correct. It's something that wanted, the whole idea was just get something up so people know that we have.
And the real issue here is our concern of being charged against our budget for this error that was made back in 1977. And what about approaching the powers to be, saying that this was created in 1977, and we hope you can resolve this at no cost to our budget? That's a fair question. There's administrative ways to do this, recognizing that there was a snafu back then. But to be clear, just going forward, you're suggesting a two-stage process at least. The first stage is just to get them on the list as a group. And then later to deal with them either individually or numerically, whatever, either, I don't know why you would have to pay $5,000 per trail I think that you list the trails, you get 6 landmarks, there are 6 resolutions, or if you need 6 resolutions, maybe you can do 6 in 1 resolution.
Well, I don't think, I think we should advocate that we shouldn't pay anything.
Well, the paying is another part of it. The first is the 2-stage, and then what is the second stage, and then is who pays. So just to sort this out, because I think we want to move forward today and just say, let's get them on the list. On the website.
Yep, Mr. Chair, I'd be ready to make a motion so that we can get past this roadblock.
Let me do my final.
Yes.
I haven't had a chance to say anything.
Clarification,
Yes, go ahead.
it's not coming from our budget per se, it's just from the county's expenses of $5,000, right? It has nothing to do with us, really.
Clarification is, anything that comes from us, if we're going to the Board of Supervisors, there is a cost.
Right.
And currently, pretty much we are being charged whatever cost it is to take to the Board of Supervisors. And we'll have this discussion later on today on our agenda item. If it's a landmark, temporarily, we have a situation that if we bring a landmark to the Board of Supervisors, we do not have to pay at this time. I wanted to make
Right.
that clear, that this is something that can change at a moment.
Okay,
Emails that we've had is, I don't want to go into that direction. We're talking about the trail, but anyway, right now, there's a cost to bring it from wherever we
Right.
do to get to the Board of
Right.
Supervisors. Someone has to pay for it. Planning development is a cost neutral department.
Huh.
They have to charge somebody for something. It's not free money.
right, oh, definitely.
Okay, let me do my final comments and we can go into the motion. I brought this forward because I wanted to do the quickest way, to let the public know that we have these county landmarks, that they have not been rescinded. And that's why, as chair, I brought this item forward. And I think it seems like we got a consensus that the first thing to do is let's just get these on our website. I'm open to putting the old numbers, so we have both with the original numbers with that link, which Commissioner Duncan mentioned, with the wording that's right in our agenda today. That would explain why an asterisk and explain why they're what they are. I'm open to either doing that or without the number. So either way with that. I think that if we want more detail for these landmarks, because there isn't much detail, what we have, that we could either work with the Trails Council. They have all the experience and the knowledge of all these trails. They could come up with all the information needed. We could maybe have a subcommittee that works with them. Maybe, I don't think it would have to go to the Board of Supervisors. I think we could come up with this information and put a link on the website explaining it. If we feel it needs to be approved by the Board of Supervisors, then we could do that. But I would think let's first learn more about each of these trails, get the information, work with powers to be in the community that know the trails better than we do, and maybe we could just do statements and link it into the landmark. So that is my thing. So go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for everybody's thoughts on this. I think it's a public issue, a very public issue. And so I think we should, for now, just stick to the facts. So that my motion would be that the HLAC put a listing regarding the 6 front country trails on the HLAC website. For now, the listing would have each trail listed individually: the Arroyo Burro Trail, the Rattlesnake Trail, the Hot Spring Trail, the Romero Canyon Trail, the Rincon Trail, and the Fremont Trail. That way, later on, if we want to add things to these individual trail listings, we'll have the capability to do that. And then below that, simply have a statement that these 6 front country trails were declared to be Santa Barbara County landmarks on November 7th, 1977 by Board of Supervisors Resolution number 77-526, and have a link which refers to that. And then have the chair establish a subcommittee to deal with this issue going forward, because we're obviously going to need some recommendations to the larger HLAC and to the Board of Supervisors. But for now, we'll just stick to the facts.
Okay, Commissioner Malcolm.
Can you clarify where these would be put? Would they be put in between number 13 and the new number 14? Or would they put somebody else?
I would leave these without numbers for now.
Yeah, but, and where would you put them in the order of the landmarks?
I would leave them separately. We can put them up at the top if we want,
Okay.
I'd put them at the end of the list.
or we can put them at the end of the list. Okay, that
Yeah.
could be something decided by this subcommittee if you want. But
Okay, well, okay, but may I suggest putting them in between number 13 and the new number 14?
I wouldn't put them there
No?
unless you want to put them there because of numerically when they were adopted. Is that,
Yeah, just because that's the order of when they were adopted.
that's a possibility?
So after number 19, then list these.
No, after number 13.
So number 14, that was in 1977, listed after the current number 14 without a number.
The point Randy is making is where on the list, if you don't put them in at the top or the beginning, we could put them just between number 13 and number 14. And that way it deals with when the Board of Supervisors resolution was made. I'm open to that.
Was that amended into your motion?
I don't think it has to be. Okay.
I'll second.
Our administrative assistant to where to put. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we need a second for further discussion?
I did, second.
Oh, we have a second. Thank you. Now we can open to discussion the motion that's on the table.
It's been shredded.
Okay, we have a motion on the table, seconded. Let's do a roll call vote just to make sure. The dais, let's start with down below, Commissioner Steinbach.
Aye.
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 And aye. Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
9-0.
For the next. It's a budget. Okay, let's move on to placement of bronze plaques in Santa Barbara County Historic County Landmark, the Davison House. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Mr. Duncan, do you mind if I move number 11 first, since Mr. Risper has been waiting? Okay, well, let's move number 11 first, and then we'll do 10 after that, just to, because we have someone that's been waiting this whole time. Okay, let me get my here. Okay, we are going to move to the 2025-2026 budget discussion. The 2025-26 budget discussion for possible increase in budget using section 18A6, petitioning for funds for the County of Santa Barbara Code of Ordinances. I brought this forward. I want to go over some background. We've kind of been through this for the last 5 or 6 months at different meetings. And I just want to go over just to refresh everybody. HLAC has been having ongoing discussions with planning development concerning our budget, since it has not increased since at least 2012. The main concern is that our planning and development staff support budget line item amount is still $6,800, which it was in 2012, and it is still today. Last few years, we have gone over the budget in our planning and staff support line item by almost 100%. Our total budget has always been $21,100. But what has been happening is when we spend over our planning and development staff support line item, it goes into other line items that we have to buy for pay for things that we need to run our commission. And yeah, we have made our total budget last few years at the expense of doing other projects. We no longer have a planner at our meetings, which you would think that would have brought down our costs. But the costs have gone up so much that even without having a planner no longer assigned to us at our meetings, we still are going over. With the new policy of charging landmark applicants to pay costs for designated from HLAC to put it on the Board of Supervisors agenda, any future landmarks coming from the public, I think, are going to be very nil once they find out that they have to pay to have a landmark done. You know, it has been brought to our attention over the last couple of years that we are no longer reviewing projects that go through the planning process. Our main purpose as a commission is to designate places of historic merit or historic landmarks, and to also maintain existing county historic landmarks. So since we have been focusing on new landmarks, what is happening is it's costing money because before, you know, we basically hardly did any new landmarks because we waited for the public to bring them to us, and then we would bring them to the top. So we had our subcommittee, which is bringing new landmarks forward, and which is costing more money by doing that. So we have a question is, what is our purview as a commission? And as you read chapter 18A, it is to create new landmarks. So we're basically doing what we're supposed to do, but it is costing a lot more money for doing what we're supposed to do. And of course, you know, the costs have increased a lot since 2012. And like I say, I keep saying 2012, this budget could have been the same for a lot before that. That is the latest, oldest budget that I've been able to find. So it could have been the same amount even before. One of our meetings, we had a meeting about budget discussion, and I was directed by the commission here to bring forward to planning development to ask for a little more specific answers. And one was, okay, how much are we charged per hour for different levels of work done by HLAC? And what was that charge in 2012? And what is that charge now? And, you know, I never got that answer, but I did get an answer about our chapter 18A, and that there is a section called A6, which is called petitioning for funds. And everyone has a copy of that in your packet. And it is, so today I thought, you know, there's so many questions here that I don't think we can solve anything today, but I just want to get everyone to be able to say what their feelings are and maybe move from there. Chapter 18A is in our 18A6, it's called petitioning for funds. And it says the Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission or other interested persons may petition the Board of Supervisors for funds necessary to carry out the purpose of this chapter. The boards of supervisors may expend all reasonable amounts of money needed to carry out the purposes of this chapter, or to acquire fee title or such lesser ownership rights or rights of possession. So there is a chapter in 18A about how we can get more money. There's so many questions, though, that come from that. Is this like a one-time thing that we can do? Or is this how we get our budget increase for the next fiscal year, 2025? I'm so glad someone is here today that maybe answers about that, because the planning process for the next budget, I mean, the next budget starts in June. Early budget discussions is going to be happening the next month or so. It might already be happening now, but I just want to get on top of this. We tried to do this before and we seem to always miss being involved. But if we can use this section 18A6, petitioning for funds, to increase our budget for next year, I don't know if that's a possibility. It's something but that's a discussion we have. As mentioned earlier, planning development has given us some costs associated, and I want to just throw them out there so we can get an idea of what kind of money we're talking about. Like I mentioned earlier, and just bringing something from us to the Board of Supervisors is X amount of hours. Those hours right now for 20 hours of staff time, this is for the All Saints. Okay, There is a letter that we authorized that the Board of Supervisors to approve for making a national or a state landmark for All Saints Church. Remember, we offered that? We found out we needed to get the Board of Supervisors approval for that. That process, which is coming up next week. I think it's next week. That is the All Saints. Anyway, the process that was 20 hours. That's costing $5,840 to do that. To get the Board of Supervisors to approve the letter, All Saints to.
Because we are the one.
We wanted it done,
So
so we
that-
brought it forward. So that is the cost. I'm just saying that is the cost of it. I'm not going to go into who pays for it, but I just want to give you dollar amounts, to get an idea. The Cold Springs Bridge, cost for bringing from that landmark, which is coming up January 7th, about $5,548. Get it to the Board of Supervisors. Just to get an idea, if someone appeals our landmark, we have the Chaffee Residence, which is happening tomorrow. That is costing $7,300. So I'm just throwing out these numbers so you can get an idea of the expenses these things are costing. And it could. I mean, we can ask questions about it. That's something I can't say yes or no, because if we bring a landmark, I was under the understanding that if HLAC brings a landmark from themselves, not from the public bringing a landmark, we do not have to pay from going from after we make the landmark to the I think that's changing. That's probably not going to happen in the future. So what can we do? And these are just different things. One is, let's work with planning and development to come up with a realistic budget that we think we need to do. I think we need to look at how many potential landmarks can HLAC realistically do in a year. Is it 4? Is it 3? Is it 2? In other words, figure out, okay, we can realistically do so many landmarks a year because we have a lot of list of our subcommittee has a potential landmark. But how many realistic? It takes a long time, as you know, from us deciding to do one all the way to the end. So is that 4? And if it costs $6,000 a landmark, you can kind of figure out how much money we need to ask the Board of Supervisors. That's a possibility. Today, maybe we could do a subcommittee to decide where we want. This is, I think, subcommittee sort of thing, and then come back to it. If we do a subcommittee, though, the work for 2025 budget is right around the corner. We have the holidays right now. January meeting is early January, so we'd have to maybe have the subcommittee come back to us in February with a realistic ask. That's what we want to do. Ask the Board of Supervisors. Because the next budget starts in June, which is not that long away. And should we go directly to the Board of Supervisors with the request? So if the subcommittee says we need X amount of dollars, and then, but by doing that, it costs us money to bring something to the Board of Supervisors to ask them for money. So, I mean, we have all these questions about our budget. I think we all agree that the $6,800 is not a realistic planning and development staff item line. You look at our other line items, actually, we can almost live with the rest of them, I think. Professional services, that is where if we do nominations, it costs about $1,000 each. Our plaques come out of that line item. It's at $9,100. It's up to everyone here to decide if that's a realistic number to keep going forward.
Yes. These are not other. These are property. So we say in our budget, one addition to it's one, a fund that we can draw up. to nominate. Maybe one year we do one, next year we do four, next year we do none, following year we do three or whatever. So that any unused funds in that county, every year, get a replenishment. Use it or not. Like a medical savings. Put away money in treatment. Use them, okay.
You know, I'm just thinking before we get into further discussion, I think that's a great idea. I first need to ask for any expertise from any members that talk to anybody on funds, except for myself. I mentioned that. And, okay, I just want to make sure we have all of this out here ahead of time before we go, because this is kind of like an open discussion type item, and I don't want us to go on for hours and hours. I'd like to narrow it down, but I think that is a great thing. And again, we have someone here that we can ask questions to. What you're talking about might have to be a separate line item, because what we're talking, when I'm saying that dollar amount was like 5,800, that is planning and staff support time. That's dollars that's out of that line item. So that's what I was kind of concentrating when I did this on that line item, so that there would be money in there that planning development wouldn't have to always panicking. Oh my gosh, they want to do another one. There's no money here. How are we going to do this? You know, that sort of thing. I mean, but I don't know if this chapter 18A6 is the right, how you do that. That's a question I throw out there. Commissioner Duncan, I mean, Malcolm.
Okay, might I suggest, I'm just thinking, rather than try and guess what they want, with appropriate talking points, because I can hear what you're saying and it makes sense. But if I get appropriate talking points, I am happy to go to my supervisor and ask him, hey, this is our challenge right here. What do you think we can do about it to present to you as a board, all five of you, rather than just trying and guess what you think?
That's why I was saying we need to come up with a plan before if we decide to go to the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, like individually, we talk to our own supervisors.
How much it costs us to do what is
Right.
18A tells us we're supposed to do, and we cannot do it on what we currently have, and we need this dollar amount and then break it down. You know, if it's, like I said, if it's 4 a year, 3 a year of nominations, it's X amount of dollars, and this is in $24, don't know what it's in 2025 or 2026, you know, it'd have to change.
Okay.
But I think what's happening is every department, planning and development gets a big chunk of money. They divide it up. All the commissions in that area gets a certain amount. Those amounts have not changed at all. And I don't know what the other commission departments are in planning and development, but I have assumed it's probably similar to what's happening here. It's the same amount.
Yeah.
Year without change.
Well,
I mean, and then, you know, and so every, you know, police and fire, whatever, they get a big chunk of money. Those departments have to divide it up into all these little nooks and crannies, how to pay their staff and everything. And I think what's happening is we're constantly just getting the same amount. Divided by 5. And so, you know, is this petitioning for funds comes out of the general fund instead of planning development? That's what they're talking about. If you'd like to chime in, I appreciate any input.
Absolutely. So there's a few different topics here. There's the current budget, there's the anticipated budget for next year, right? So the current budget is $21,100. And in general, that's a pool. The different categories have been, if you go over in the staff support and you're under professional services, you know, you're still under the 21 for this fiscal year. And so that's been how it's operated and currently. There's the current year's budget, as Jonathan put up here, you're at $10,932.47. That's in its entirety. That's out of the 21,100. projects in the pipeline for 2929 East Valley Road, that appeal is $7,300. That's not factored into that number. The Cold Springs Bridge cost estimate is $5,548. That's not in that. That right there puts you at $23,337 for this current year's budget. Your budget is 21,100.
I guess the question, I'm sure all of us have this, is, are we being charged for someone that appeals our landmark? I mean, I would think that the person that makes the appeal would have to pay for that.
The appeal for something that the HLAC nominates and they appeal it to the board, that comes out of the budget. Someone has to pay for that.
Not the person that makes the appeal?
No, they didn't ask for their property to be landmarked. So that comes out of the HLAC's budget. So
I just want to clarify, I think they were charged an appeal fee already.
Sorry.
I'm pretty sure they were already charged an appeal fee.
I think so. Otherwise, everyone.
to file with the board, there is an appeal fee. That's correct. If there's an additional cost that they've paid, I'll look into it. But the number of staff hours for the 2929 East Valley Road appeal is 25 staff hours. That's billed at $290. That makes up the 7,300.
Question?
Sure.
So if a planning commission rezones a parcel, down zoning, up zoning, whatever it is, and the rezoning is against the wishes of the owner, and the owner is able to prove substantial loss because of the down zoning or whatever happened, whatever the decision of the planning commission or the other commission is, and appeals. So does that landowner have to pay, does the planning commission have to pay for the appeal of that landowner for having downzoned his property?
Would-
Isn't that a comparable? No?
I don't have the answer for
Well, that would be a legal question, would it not?
it. Would be a development review and
Right. So that is just one example of many, many calls that are made by building departments and planning commissions, planning departments, and so on and so forth, that are the substance of many applicants' despair and complaints. And I'm just wondering if the applicants in the past, applicants have had to pay to fight that, to enforce the law, so to speak. And so now we're saying that if the Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission makes a decision that in the interest of the county, which is health, welfare, and safety or whatever, and cultural resources, does the Historic Landmarks Commission now have to pay to do its job?
we're a full cost recovery department, which means the work that we do has to be paid for by someone.
I understand that.
That is. the-
Someone has to pay.
So if a property owner appeals a decision, then they pay those appeals. If a designee appeals their designation that they didn't want on their property, then someone has to pay those appeal. They didn't self-nominate.
So this is now going to happen, or this is not what has been happening? Is that historically correct?
I think this situation is new because this or this designation by the HLAC to these properties is something that is recent. That's my understanding.
Right.
So this is,
This is about budgeting and about who
It is
pays
about
for it. Yeah, exactly. I understand. I just want to be clear about that.
so having said, and shared with you the projects that are in the pipeline. With these two projects, that exceeds the HLAC budget by 2,200. So that's the current state of the budget. Your contractor has invoices that they're going to submit. We're 44% through the fiscal year, another 56%.
Mr. Chair, could you ask the speaker to speak up a little bit?
We have another 56% of the fiscal year that is still remaining. So at this point, at 44% of the fiscal year, you've exceeded your budget by $2,237. Okay. So that's the current status after these two projects go through.
And
Now-
including what we just approved today.
Right. Not including those. I think it sounds like you reached a pretty simple solution on the trails.
So
So,
I guess my question is, Chair, and I think, we have a lot of questions, but is going through petitioning of funds the proper way to go to increase our budget in 2025, 2026? Or is it something that we still try to work with planning and development to get a bigger share of the pie? I mean, I'm not quite sure how to read this. Is this, I'm thinking this petition of funds is like a one-time thing out of the general fund versus a actual budget thing that is what we're trying to do to increase it in the future.
so what I will share with you is the county is operating and forecasting very frugally. And they're forecasting the revenues very frugally. They're not anticipating any expansion requests, and those are not likely to be considered or approved. So the recommendation is that that HLAC work directly with planning and development, and we'll have communications with the CEO's office and see if there's something that we can do to assist. What we can do is forecast. What we generally do is we increase our rates by the CPI every year, and we can do that with HLAC's budget. I can't go back to 2012. It's just something I simply cannot do. But I can build that into the budget for the coming year. It's not a whole lot, but it's something. And and just the only other thing I can offer is just to be mindful of these projects and what the costs are against the budget.
Okay, so this petition of funds really wouldn't help for the next year's budget. It would be for, if we say the Board of Supervisors, oh my gosh, we're down $10,000 for the year. We need this $10,000 to finish a project we do. It's like a one-time thing. Is that what this chapter is in here? Or can we go to them and say, it has not increased for such a long time. This is the cost of us to do business that we've been asked to do, as our mandate. And we feel that going forward, we should have X amount increase in our budget. Is that something, but I don't, that's like at the micro level, and they look at the big level, I think. So that's what I'm a little concerned on how you use this chapter.
Mr. Chair? Could I ask Ms. Ryerson a question? Yes. So this section 18A-6, where it talks about petitioning the board for funds necessary to carry out the purposes of this chapter, isn't that basically boilerplate? It would also be in the empowering ordinances for other agencies within the county? Or is this unique to us?
I don't know, but I have not seen this type of section in other ordinances.
You haven't?
No.
Oh. Do you think it has to do with the age of this?
Possibly.
Well, I noticed that here it talks about other uses of the funds, acquiring fee title or lesser ownership rights. It could be right of ways or conservation easement or something like that. Yeah, easements that it deems necessary to expedient. So in some places, it's sort of broad and it speaks to other uses, but this is general enough that obviously it could obviously speak to our general budget. So you're supportive of that in that regard, that it allows us to
It
do this.
could apply to your general budget. But what I've seen in the county is usually you work through a department.
So you think, you're pointing out that our problem is that planning and development is acting sort of like a filter for our funding, and they're deciding how much we get and where the expenses are charged. So that we can't speak directly to the Board of Supervisors?
You can. You definitely can under the section. I'm just saying, usually the budgets are prepared, by departments for the commissions that they manage, and then it goes through the CEO also.
Mhm. So
CEO's
if
office.
we had a problem with the way the accounting is being done, which is obviously being done in a way to basically cut off our knees and make us not do anything, I mean, you might as well get rid of the planning commission. You might get rid of every commission if you charge them for whatever their work product goes to the Board of Supervisors. A really easy way to cut off our expenses here is to not require the Board of Supervisors to make official landmarks. If the process stopped at the end of us, then this expense would not occur. So this is, well, obviously I'm bearing into comments here, but it's pretty clear this accounting system does not promote us getting the job done or the Board of Supervisors getting the job done.
I have another thought to add. So one is if the HLAC initiates a nomination, it's going to get charged, go through the.
Currently, they're saying
Well, okay.
no.
The other thing that HLAC is going to get charged is if it decides to deny a project or designates a property so that the appeal. So in the process of doing the job, it is now being held responsible for the consequences of their action. So that is contrary to in my history of public service and public policy. That is not the way the government works. You don't ask a person to go out and do a job and then fire him or kill him, jail him for doing his job, unless he breaks the law. Unless he breaks the law. So this is, I'm speaking totally extemporaneously. I have no business talking. But that seems to be these two things of getting us off at the knees to do it, and then holding us responsible financially, punitively, for designating or causing interference with the property owner doesn't want to do it. He says, I don't have to do it. I want to do it. I want to tear down this historic landmark and I want to build my big house. Just tear it down. Or in benign neglect or whatever. It's a double whammy.
And also just to, there's nowhere in chapter 18A that says that the property owner has to agree to a landmark. We have always bent over backwards to try to get that agreement.
Right.
But nowhere it says that HLAC has to have agreement with the property. So I have to agree with this charging us for an appeal when it doesn't say that they have to agree to a landmark. Me, I think we should be charged for that. Because this is a very specific instance. We decided to move forward because we felt that this was such an important property. We tried to work with them. And if you look at the resolution, we put in exemptions left and right. that landmark.
In your scenario that you're just describing, we are in fact following the law. In the case of the party, the owner is now applying to be able to have us pay for them to actually break the law.
That would be a county council question.
It would be.
Since it's not on our, in chapter 18A, that we have to have approval of property owner.
Yeah,
Is it-
that's an issue.
Is it issue that we are being charged for that? This is a one instance.
Mr. Chair, but it's my understanding, we're also being charged for just making something a landmark. Okay, we can't win either way.
Mr. Sluga.
Yeah, I've spent most of my life in the private sector business, so I'm kind of frustrated by the bureaucracy that I'm hearing here. I mean, it sounds like we can't afford to exist based on the monies that are allocated, and the process, we have no control over the charges that are being levied against our budget, which again hasn't been increased since
At least 2012.
I'm just a couple more things. So again, I'm new to this group, and I think we have been asked to provide a service to benefit the public. We're all serving without pay. But the way this is set up, we can't afford to do what we're supposed to. So we maybe have to go out of business.
Okay, kind of revisiting just what I said a few minutes ago regarding talking to our supervisors. I don't think they're probably aware of our situation. They know we exist, they know we function, but they don't know our hands are tied with this budget thing yet, unless somebody specifically tells them. I don't know if any one of us has talked to our individual supervisors about this specifically, but I think if we do and get a channel of communication going with each of our individual supervisors, then they would actually know and say, do something about it and say, hey, wait, there's something wrong down below. Let's fix the budget later or add something to it, whatever we can do, because this doesn't make sense. Us complaining about it and talking about it amongst ourselves isn't going to communicate to the supervisors the actual problem unless we actually individually talk to them. And I'm willing to do that again. If somebody develops some talking points for me, I'm happy to go by them, because I can't, articulate all this what's in your brain, because you know more about it than I do, understand more of it than I do, excuse me. And I'd be happy to review all that and speak with my supervisor individually about it.
I have a further wrinkle on this budget issue, HLAC's budget. In addition to HLAC being proactive this last year in nominating landmarks, which is adding to our costs, we should also remember that prior to this new active phase, that for many years, HLAC very passively waited for planning and development to bring projects for our review. So we would normally review 2 or 3 projects. Sometimes we'd be here for hours on more than that. And this was considered the proper function of this commission was to assist the planning department in cultural resources management and preservation. And as we are required to do under the code. So planning and development stopped doing that a year or two ago. So my question is, how much is that saving the department? How much funding are they saving by reducing our activity level to the point where if we weren't proposing these nominations, we wouldn't even have to come in. There'd be nothing for us to do. So maybe there's some, maybe the department is breaking even with us now that we're being more active. Because prior to this time, as far as I can remember, many years back, and some of the other old timers here can confirm that every year we went over the budget. We were basically just showing up and reviewing. We weren't being proactive. So maybe there's a bit of a trade-off we should ask about in this budget situation.
So I can tell you in years past, I've been with the department for 2 years. In years past, HLAC has come very close to staying within budget, you know, with the exception. HLAC has stayed pretty close to the $21,100 budget in the years past. It's gone over a little bit, I believe, in the past 2 years, but nothing significant.
My recollection is that on the E&D staff support, we have always went over on that. We're
Okay.
talking 10, 12, 13 years ago during the very different period of activity. We could get the old budgets out. but-
So when I speak to the budget, I'm speaking to the budget amount as a whole, not the line
Okay.
items. So while you may have gone over budget on the staff support, you would be under budget on the administrative costs. But you would still, HLAC still remained fairly close to the $21,100 budget every year. So to your point, you may have gone over in the staff support, sure. But there were other savings and other line items that offset that. So,
Excuse me, but in these years past, you did not then start subtracting those funds from the other funds. We were always told that the staff support line, we could exceed as much as we wanted to, basically ignore that, and those other funds were still available.
as a part of the budget as a whole, yes. And that's what I just conveyed, I hope. So the total budget is $21,100.
But in those years past, you weren't charging us for what it took to take one of our landmarks to the Board of Supervisors. I've never heard of this before. Never heard of our commission being charged, our budget being charged for taking something from here to the Board of Supervisors.
It's true. It's true. This is a change. This is a change in policy.
It's, yes, this hasn't happened before. I don't think these circumstances have occurred before. So that's why this charge is occurring now. That's my understanding.
We've made other landmarks before.
It, so if there were landmarks taken to the board and there were planner time associated with those, then those would be charged against HLAC. Okay, so
Yeah,
You're saying going forward.
I heard
Pardon me?
Cold Spring, not the Cold Spring, the Rocky Nook Park. I know there was a lot of extra cost in that one, and we were not charged for that. And my understanding is that huge charge made them rethink going forward what's going to happen.
And from what I've told, that's been conveyed that going forward, there will be charges against these projects. You have the same budget that you've had in years past.
You get to charge us this money, but you don't give us any budget to pay for it.
Okay, I guess this is a circular argument. If there are designations against property owners who are not wanting those designations and they appeal those to the board, then those are costs that HLAC is incurring as part of that. Right?
Which I think us as a board disagree with that decision,
Okay.
because we feel that it doesn't say anywhere in chapter 18A that a landmark has to be supported by the property. And this would be a legal question that can't be answered today, but I think needs to be looked into, ask the county council to look into that.
Long story short, I have a problem understanding why the policy is changing to increase our costs, but is not changing with respect to budgeting our expenses. Your point. In a nutshell.
Well, I think, okay, we could go on all day on this, and I think maybe we should, my idea was, let's get a subcommittee of people that are really interested in this, to look into what our next step should be. You know, we have this option in our chapter 18A, I believe it is. Yeah, petitioning for funds, if that's the direction we want to go. But again, how do we get it to the Board of Supervisors? You know, is it a letter? Is it a resolution, or, I mean, whatever, but we have, you know, if we decide to go that route, yeah, we would get charged for it. So, you know, we have to figure that out, but I think a subcommittee should sit down. Our problem is, of course, we're in the holiday season now, and I know everyone is super busy. Our next meeting is early January, so there's no way nothing can be done before January. So I was thinking a subcommittee to be formed with a date to try to get back by the February meeting. Hopefully that will give us enough time to have input for the 2025-26 budget. The subcommittee could decide that we need money now, this fiscal year, to supplement the project, you know, which means that would be, I don't know. I mean, this is something that we need to hash out and then bring a report back.
So before the formation of a subcommittee, there's no rule against us going to the supervisor that appointed us individually.
Talking to your supervisors, that what Commissioner Melton.
No rule against that?
You know, but the whole idea is, you know, we have some numbers now, what it costs. And so if you're looking at increasing our budget, we can input those numbers to make a realistic budget. And then if it overwhelms them, we can just say, this is the cost of us to do business as a.
He was gonna respond to.
Okay.
You can talk to your individual supervisors. You have to be careful under the Brown Act, though. I could give you some advice on that separately.
Be careful of the Brown Act and what other act?
That's the only act.
What's that?
That's the only act, but I can give you some advice separately.
Okay, but just one of us could go to one supervisor and
We can
one-on-one, mano a mano and talk.
And if no one else, like say I'm first district, I don't go to third district or I don't go to fourth district, I let
Oh, yeah.
the other super, that we wouldn't violate the Brown Act. Right?
Mr. Chair, I just got another question since we have somebody from accounting here. It's my impression that there's all kinds of different things that would cause both an appeal to the Board of the Supervisors or where the Board of Supervisors has the last decision on something. So is in every one of those cases, those parts of county government that are generating the need for that appeal or for those final decisions, are they all being charged that separate line item for their time at the Board of Supervisors?
So what I can tell you is we're full cost recovery and the items that go to the board are budgeted for as HLAC has your budget. And when those appeals go to the board, they hit specific line items in the P&D budget. They're part of our budget, just as HLAC has your $21,100 budget. If your budget were to increase, then that would offset some of these costs, of course. But without a mechanism to recover these costs, there's the $21,100 budget that HLAC has to adhere to. So that's the parameters that we have to work within. Now, that may require focus on the projects that you review, or some other internal mechanism as a commission.
But for instance, if we were in community services or the Parks Department or something like that, would they all have charges against them if something went to the Board of Supervisors?
So to your point, Commissioner, we're a full cost recovery department, whereas I believe Parks and Public Works are funded by the general fund. So any costs that we incur, we have to recover. And that's what we're tasked with. And that's why there's this accounting of and budget requirements for HLAC, because we have a budget amount, and unless we can recover additional costs from somewhere, we have to maintain the $21,100 budget.
When you say we are a full cost recovery. who's
Planning and
we?
development. Our department,
We.
yes,
E&D.
yes.
Commissioner Sluga?
Again, I come from the private sector. I'm an architect, retired. And it occurs to me, you're charging us and we have no control over how your staff are recording their time. I mean, if they take a long coffee break and they're needing to fill out their timesheet, or if they are asked to have a certain number of billable hours in a time period, there's no motivation for them to do things efficiently. And we have no control. And I'm not sure that you have control if you have a bunch of people sitting around looking at computers and supposedly doing something, but an extra hour here, an extra half hour there at your rates, and we end up paying for it. We have no control.
So the control that the commission has, Commissioner Sluga, is the request that the commission puts on staff, the projects that the commission nominates, and the time it takes to support the commission itself. And I would just encourage the commission to be mindful of that. That is something that you do have control over. But I can tell you
I'm
that.
sorry,
this-
it just, the costs like $5,000, to do what would seem to be a fairly simple task of reviewing what we're putting forward before it goes to the council. It's hard for me, again, coming from the private sector, it's hard for me to understand what hourly rates you're charging or
It's $292 an hour.
It's how much?
$292 an hour.
Good God.
Commissioner, Nelson?
And that you mentioned the cost, how would this cost recovery be done in the past? If not taken from our budget from the past? There,
It's, your budget is paid for through the permitting fees.
Mhm.
That's how the department funds your commission and other commissions. So we have revenue that we take in, and one of the commissions that we fund is HLAC.
Mhm.
We budget the $21,100. If there's no additional recovery for these additional expenditures that HLAC has, then we can't fund it. Right?
But this $5,000 issue, this would not have come up even 5 years ago. So if something happened, we don't think about it as a commission. It wouldn't have been taken out of our budget. How would that have been recovered before? Because it is different now.
Fashion.
Same fashion?
20 hours is $5,548, right? Times 292. If P&D staff has to prepare a board letter to take something to the commission, that requires planner hours, right? So the support that P&D provides to the commission, the HLAC, is charged by the planner hours that they have to charge for those. I don't.
Okay, but I'm saying specifically, this is, we're kind of blindsided by this. This has never happened before with that we're getting charged like a quarter of our budget for something that we kind of took for granted that we didn't need to think about. And now you're saying, well, hey, here it is. Like, I don't understand what changed.
You self-designated a property that the property owner didn't want.
Well, we did that with the Schroed Packing House I don't know, over 10, 15 years ago.
don't-
And I'm sure the railroad appealed it in some way, and we didn't think about the expenses then. What changed?
I don't have the historical reference for those.
Okay, I think we need to move on. I think, okay, real quick here.
Thank you, sir, for coming in.
Thank you
And
Thank you
it's
for
helped,
being brutally honest.
it's helped a lot to have you here.
But I just want to leave all of you with the fact that we value the work that you do. It's that is not, in question in my mind. It's simply there's a budget that we have to work within. And if that gets raised, then there's more money. But right now, we're happy to work with the CEO's office and have discussions of what it would take to increase that.
Just to ask, I'm still pondering $292 an hour.
That's for the planner hours.
And that's for a full planner? It's not for a little staff clerical person, is it?
It's $200, $292 an hour for a planner.
For a planner? So, okay, so it's full, the planner is the only one who can fill out the application to go to the Board of Supervisors? They don't have little clerks and running around that do this for maybe $120 an hour?
They have to, that's who completes the board letters to take something to the board, yes.
I'm thinking of.
I never,
Job.
We need to
we
move
need to
on.
move on, but I wanted to get for the record put in that in addition to the fact that HLAC no longer reviews projects as part of our duties, which should save quite a bit of staff time on the part of P&D. We also, I just remembered, don't have a full-time staff. We had a planner here for years and years and years, full-time. So again, that lowers our cost, our overhead to the planning and development department. Thank you.
I wanted to appreciate our county council, because you're not charging us. County council is this, we're not being charged for county council, and you do a lot of work on our behalf. And you've written memos, and I really appreciate it that we're not having to pay for county council as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we need to move forward with this, and I think a subcommittee would be the easiest way. And the subcommittee, whoever decides we have on the subcommittee, we try to, that subcommittee try to come back to the February meeting with some proposals to move forward. Whatever we go in. So I guess I'm just going to open it up to who would like to be involved in this. It's not an easy topic, money, budget. It's not a fun thing to do. But we have some numbers now that we could calculate what needs left to do the work we need to do. So
The subcommittee.
well, the subcommittee, I mean, I could be on the subcommittee, yes. But I mean, we need some people that are interested in this, to work on it.
If you were here, it would be on the sub.
Okay. I mean, it would be nice that we could meet in person. So if it's, people who live in North County, it's very difficult to come down for other meetings, but if you have a real big interest, please meet representation throughout the whole county. We could always meet maybe halfway at Buell or something, for a meeting. But I think we need to really hammer this down, and it needs to, like I say, be done at least by February. Don't you think? We're going to be asking for more money for the new budget.
The budget discussions are going on now.
They're going on right now. So it's even more.
What is the likelihood of just doubling our budget and having it? I mean, is that, you said if the county is being frugal, but it sounds like we need to double our budget.
I can't advise you on what your budget should be. What I can tell you is that expansion requests by the board are not likely considered to be approved unless there's a funding source.
I want to make sure, since I'm going to be on the subcommittee. So the Board of Supervisors gives like planning development a pool of money, and then planning development divides it up within allocates it within.
So we're full cost recovery, which means we receive very limited funds from the board. Our permitting fees pay for our services. What the public pays for our permitting fees pays for our services. We don't, compared to other departments, the funding that we get from the general fund is very limited.
So then what you look at is you look at in advance, we think there's going to be this many projects in the county that it's going to bring X amount of dollars in that we can budget to pay for.
Right. The permitting fees, we anticipate the coming year will have X number of permits issued, which will generate a certain number of dollars. And we allocate that across the entire department to pay for the services that we provide.
Mr. Chair,
Subcommittee.
it's pretty obvious that we are not helping their budget because landmarks don't generate a lot of permits. We are keeping, these exteriors unchanged for the most part in these various parts of the county. So, we're not appreciated in a numerical way, unless somebody, higher up says, yes, this is a public benefit, and for the purposes of the public benefit, we need to separate this from the revenues that are generated by development, because in fact, we're sort of contra development. So it's not a comfortable fit in some ways in this department. We might be better off in a department that talks about resource conservation. Yeah.
not a revenue producing
We're,
agency.
we're doing a subcommittee right now. So I have Commissioner Wittosh on the subcommittee. Any other volunteers?
Nominee.
Well, I'm, yeah. Money budget is not a, yeah, it's not a fun thing. Anybody down here in the front row, any raising hands? No? Okay. Mr. Malcolm? Okay. So we have Malcolm, I think 3 people is a subcommittee. Allowed to do 4?
You could go for.
I think that's something that. Okay, so right now we have Malcolm, Wittosh, Sal, 3. Well, okay, we'll stay at 3. And I will be contacting the 2 of you, and we will go from there. Okay? So we have a subcommittee. And what would you like to call this? The budget 2025, 2026 budget subcommittee?
What's the book, 2025?
2026.
What's that one that they're, the new government? 2025.
Oh, yeah.
Project 2025.
Okay, everybody, we need to move on. We need to move on. We have our subcommittee. Okay, let's move on. Thank you so much and thank you for coming to be here to answer questions, because even though it's not a happy subject, it makes it clearer for all of us to understand where we're at. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming and telling us the bad news.
Okay, let's move on to item number 10, placement of bronze plaque on Santa Barbara County landmark, the Davison House. The County Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission, HLAC, will review and approve the location for the County of Santa Barbara Historic Landmarks placard placement at the Davison. And I would just turn this over to Commissioner Duncan. And Commissioner Duncan, take it away.
Thank you. I'll give you a little update at the same time. The plaques that we have for Maddie's Tavern and Hartley House, they've been mounted. They still need a finish paint coat from the owners, which I was promised a long time ago. But they're mounted, and I think they look very nice. And so they are in the locations that were approved by the HLAC. So the one for Maddie's is right there at the front, where you would go into what was the stagecoach office. And then for Hartley House, it's also sort of in the front in terms of what was the front door to the Hartley House. And in the case of Hartley House, we had this same situation that we're looking at here with the Davison House in Ballard, where it's board and batten. So it's hard to find one flat area where you can mount a plaque. And I met with the owner, and we decided that a place like this near the front door is really the appropriate one, but it does straddle some bats. So what I'll do is use some bats behind it, so there's no empty space, and it'll be securely mounted that way. The owner does want to put it down just a little bit. So what I'm thinking is that we'll put it so that it's directly opposite that second row of panes that are in the door. So it'll be sort of centered on those panes. So that's maybe lowered about 6 inches, something like that. We looked at further over to the right in the next open space, but then it got too busy next to the electric meter. And then we put it over to the left, past the window to the left of the door, but that was, it's like too much in the middle of the house. So I'd recommend the space that you can see here, and you just got a far view and a close view. Can you show us a close to view? Well, he's out. You can turn your pages since you have paper versions. So that's how it is close up. And I'll just put about an 1.5 inch bat on the left-hand side of that big fat batten and support it on the right-hand side too. It's a little tricky because these bats are odd size materials. This is about 1 1/16 rough redwood. Any questions?
I support your suggestion of moving it down. And I think that's the best.
Okay.
It's fine.
This property is for sale again,
It's
sale again.
for sale. Yeah.
In the interest of time, could we improve the look by putting, by adding, you were talking about adding a blank behind it? Could it come all the way to the edge of the, would that look a little better than just sort of having that space underneath?
Oh, are you thinking of trying to move it next to the door frame, door
No,
jamb?
what I'm saying, as far as as far as having that space
Mhm.
between the wall and the plaque, you were going to put something behind that.
Yes.
So why can't we put a piece of wood that would go all the way to the edge of the back of the plaque? So you'd see actual.
You actually have a board right now that the plaque is mounted on. The board is routed out.
So is this an actual, is this what's happened there? Or is this
Uh, Actually, you're looking at a piece of cardboard put on some white paper. But the white paper represents a piece of board that is routed out to accept the plaque so that we can screw in the backside of that board to mount the plaque on that. And then that surround is mounted onto the battens and to the siding.
Okay, so will it look like this then?
That's what it looked like.
And
Yes,
you,
maybe the question maybe is to put a little
You-
board around so that there's
You
not
want to
s-
move it to the left, the right, up or down?
Filler.
like a
I'm,
pillar around it so that bugs and stuff won't get behind.
It's totally sealed.
Oh, okay, you have it all.
It will be totally sealed.
Okay.
so I won't see a shadow behind the,
You will not see a shadow there.
what will I see?
You will see what it looks like as though the batten material just sort of went like this, like that.
That's nice. That's nice.
Okay,
It frames it. Basically, the batten frames the plaque.
The batten frames the plaque.
oh, well, that's sort of what I want. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Mr. Cathcart, his last,
I should have brought the finished pictures of Maddie's.
he might just resign from the board here. Any other comments on this? I just wanted, oh, go ahead.
Can I make a motion?
I just want to quickly just say, thank you for contacting the property owner and making that, I know it's always not easy to connect and getting them to, of course, we knew they agreed ahead of time. Agreed to the place to put it. So thank you for all the work that you're doing and for creating all that you're going to do, not just putting the plaque on like we had to do a rock in the park. I mean, you had to create the whole wood and stuff around. Now it's just
Yes, I move that we approve the location with the adjustments that have been proposed.
second.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. We have one more agenda item here. Resignation of Third District HLAC member Lansing Duncan. The County Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission, HLAC, would like to thank Commissioner Lansing Duncan for his years of service and dedicated work to the community in preserving historic resources in the county of Santa Barbara. And I thought it was very important. We don't do this for every commissioner when they leave, but I think it's important. Lansing has been on this commission for 13 years. If you had waited till April, I think it would have been 14 years. Started in April. But I just think it's important that we honor you for all your hard work. We all know all the work you've done. Minutes, who wants to volunteer here, please? You know, but in your detail, I have a little certificate I put together for you. It's nothing real fancy. Just says hereby issues the certificate of appreciation to thank Lansing Duncan for his 13 years of service as 3rd District Representative on the Commission. Lansing has served on numerous subcommittees of the Commission during his tenure, spent many hours researching potential of our. Thank you, Lansing, for your years of service and dedication to preserve historic resources in.
The photographer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to beg your patience for just a few minutes more. I do appreciate this. It has been a pleasure. And it's been a pleasure working with you because you have got a lot done as chair. You've done a really great job, especially making lemonade out of lemons. You pulled things back from the dead. Look at Rocky Nook. You've managed to really get us going again, even as we focus more on landmarks. And you've shown a great example in terms of your preparedness for each hearing, putting your notes down in writing and doing all the legwork in advance. It takes a lot talking to all these staff people and other departments. And I think we've all been empowered by your empowerment. And I do also want to thank all my other commissioners here. It's been a pleasure to work with you, to hear our diverse ideas, and the different perspectives are really helpful for me since I tend to be opinionated. So it's good. It's sort of like having a family, you know, who will tell you the truth sometimes. But I also want to recognize some of the many commissioners I've had the pleasure to work with. John Woodward, Sue Adams, Ed Lindvik, James Kiriakou, Gina Fisher, Eileen Wakehoff, who was here with us for so long, Darian Bleacher, Frank Grube, Jessica Tade and Ann Glasgow. All of these were commissioners who, just as I pulled out some old files, you know, these names came up. And I really want to thank the staff people. So obviously, Jonathan, you've been a pleasure to work with, and David Villalobos, who I was really familiar with from Planning Commission days too, and Anita Odyssey McPhail, who was so wonderful as our staff person for so long, and Leah Graham, and of course, Ann Ryerson, who fortunately isn't charging us for her time. Okay, fortunately, we can take advantage of that because she's been very, very helpful. So thanks to you all. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And on that note, I want to adjourn the meeting, and our next meeting will be January 13th.